Hello, beautifuls. You're at the Indigo Rose Lounge. I'm your host, Alyce Dylan, and I hope you are all having most magnificent days and lives. Oh, you came here for the joy. You came here for the fun. You came here for the love of it all. I wanted to just touch on imagination quickly. It's a huge subject for the indigos, the clairs, the spiritually perceptive in general, actually for humanity, although they don't always understand the context that it happened in. So I can give you a little demonstration to start us off. So let me try this. Hear that? Well, that was a couple of little noises. And what did your mind do with that? Well, it was a teaspoon in a teacup. And if you got that, then your imagination produced that. So your imagination produced the image, maybe, of a teacup with a teaspoon. And a lot of the input we receive through our senses is like that. You can read a fantasy book, for example, or a thriller novel, and your imagination takes the information from the words and often creates a visual or a story in your mind, which is why movies are never as good as the book, because each of our imaginations interprets the words in the book slightly differently. So, what we see as well, although we are fairly aligned in our agreement on what things are physically, still it's our imagination that's taking the input and creating a view. Same with hearing. We can hear the sound of a bird, we know what that bird is, and so we look for it, but already having created the picture of the bird in our mind's eye. So imagination is not the place where we sit and daydream. That's not its sole function. The imagination actually plays this huge role across all of the senses, where we can imagine something by a little bit of input. You can hear a sound, and that imagination, that sound can catapult you into a whole different environment. So our imagination, I don't think is correctly understood by majority of humans. I think your imagination is where you make up stuff. And I suppose if that's true, then we're all making up everything every day, because we receive little bits of information sometimes, and our imagination fills in the rest. So you have a little piece of the puzzle, and your imagination then extrapolates that information out into a picture. And that's true for five-sensed or spiritually perceptive. It's across the board. That's what our imagination does. Now, there are people, of course, that have very limited imaginations, especially, in the five-sensed world. There are people that have limited imaginations, but not so in amongst the spiritually perceptive, because our imagination plays a much wider role. Just as the five senses are receiving information, translating that information through the imagination into a picture or into a series of inputs that then draw on memory. That can also happen. But the imagination is the key fulcrum. It's the key interpreter of the imagination initially. So you might have heard that sound, and your mind might have come up with teaspoon, teacup, but then in your imagination you would have formed that, and then maybe the memory kicked in and you drew on the memory to find other pictures like that. But either way, the imagination is central, right? Okay, so the sixth sense, the spiritually perceptive, we do the same thing, except with inputs that arrive at things we may never have seen or never have known about. So it would be like me playing a sound for you that you have no way of identifying. You've never heard that sound before, you don't know what it is. But the imagination fills in the details so that we get a clear picture. Okay? So that's what we do. When we're receiving information from higher selves or from our spirit selves or from those who are around and support us, when we're receiving that information, we bring that information into our minds, and the imagination takes what it can and then fills in the rest. So when we tell an adult when we're four that Grandpa came and visited me last night and brought me a flower. Oh, you're imagining it. Well, they're right, you are imagining it, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen, especially if Grandpa's maybe in the next world, yeah? So imagination is poo-pooed like it's a bad thing. Oh, you're imagining. Well, no new businesses would ever have been created without the imagination. Imagination is key. It's like the processing center. It's like the computer. The imagination takes in the information, and where there's missing bits, it fills that in. And it's the imagination then that we rely on heavily as spiritually perceptive people to receive information from our higher selves, from our spirit selves. We receive that information, our imagination translates that, and depending what we are, clairvoyant, clairsentient, whatever, we then take that and maybe we create a picture that correlates, maybe we hear sounds that correlate, however we interpret that information. So to have a good imagination is vital to being a good translator, to being a person who can translate extrasensory perception. We receive this information, our imagination processes it into usable information. And then we either accept that information or we query it or we pass it along or whatever it is that we're going to do with that. So the imagination really needs to be recategorized, not as something that belongs to fantasy books or to outlandish things. Our imagination plays a key role every single day in everything that we do. It is the translator of received signal, whether it is a five-sense person or a spiritually perceptive person. The imagination translates the received signal into something useful. And we can then go and act on that, whatever that is. So next time somebody says to you, oh, you're imagining it, then yes, you are. And so are they. They're imagining absolutely everything because our imagination is the place of compilation of inputs. You can, for example, also use the imagination. You can harness the imagination backwards. And here I'm going to step for a moment into quantum physics. I know, what does that have to do with imagination? Well, some people would think a lot because it's very out there science, although it's becoming more and more accepted. Quantum physics explains that there is no stuff, that all the stuff that we are looking at, that we experience, is really just energy that has agreed to be stuff for a while. How it agrees to be stuff is that it vibrates at a certain particular frequency, and that matches something else of that exact same frequency, and those two things stick exactly together. So the pieces of energy that make up the desk in front of me, they are all vibrating at exactly the same level for a period, not forever. It's not an eternal thing. It's just for now, this desk is vibrating at a certain frequency. All of the energy particles of this desk are vibrating at the same frequency. I've also mentioned before that my belief is that attractive force, that force that holds those particles together, is love. So that for me completes the quantum physics lesson for today, that love holds everything together. And some people might say that's in my imagination, but it's a lovely part. I love that part of my imagination. I'm going to stick with it. So, what we do know through quantum physics is that energy of like vibration attracts. So, the more like the next piece of energy, the more likely it is to attract. And so, this goes to explaining the art of manifestation, or the idea of manifesting into your world. So let me take you for a moment into a time. It can be some time ahead. It can be this afternoon or tomorrow morning, whatever works for you. And you go to either your letterbox or your front door, and there waiting at the door for you is a parcel. And in that parcel is something that you love, is something that you absolutely love. Oh, open that parcel. Receive that gift of this thing that you love. Oh, hold it in your hands. I would be bouncing up and down. Myself, I'm going to do that. I'm going to bounce up and down. And oh, I'm so happy to receive this gift. Thank you. Whoever sent it, this anonymous gift from the universe, from someone out in the universe, is this amazing thing that I love, that you love. Isn't it awesome? Look at this thing. Hold it in your hands. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, hold it to you because you love it so much. Show it to the people. Show it to the people around you. Isn't this amazing? Look at this. Look at this. I received this. Isn't that great? We might want to do a dance and a jump and a jig and a woo! Yay! All right. Now you have created a moment. You have created a moment with a frequency, and that frequency is now out there. And so that moment with that frequency is now going to attract a moment of exactly the same frequency. Quantum physics tells us that. Things of the same frequency are drawn to each other across space and time. It doesn't matter. The things with the same frequency attract. They are drawn together, in my words, by love. But whatever you've now put this picture out, things, put it out to the cosmic kitchen. You've said, look at this thing that I love. Look at me receiving it. Look at how happy I am. Isn't that awesome? You have, with your imagination, created something. You've created a moment in time with a frequency. Oh, and it's a lovely thing. And oh, how gorgeous it is. And this thing is now going to do all that it can to, this occurrence is going to be drawn by the frequency you've put out there. One of the best books, one of the ways you can really play with this concept, is Illusions by Richard Bach. I don't know if you've ever come across this book. It was one of those aha books for me back in teenage years, really teenage years. But I got a copy of Illusions by Richard Bach, and it just changed my world. It changed my world because I did the exercise. I did the imagination harnessing singular exercise. And if you've read the book, you'll know about the blue feather. And you can play with that picture. And if you just imagine a drawing of a blue feather, and you see yourself holding this drawing of this blue feather, and you stay there. Stay there in this imagination. Stay there in this picture of you holding this blue feather for a minute, 30 seconds. Just hold this blue feather and look at it. Or you can make it a real feather. You can hold on to a real blue feather. Stay with that for 30 seconds and then go about your days. And you let me know when the blue feather shows up. It's a wonderful exercise, and it will teach you your own power. It will teach you the power of the imagination. In the income side, in the incoming information side, we harness our imagination to interpret the information we're receiving from our guides, from our supporters, from the fairies in the next world. We receive that information from them and we interpret it. We can run into problems there, and I have mentioned this before, but I'll do it again. In this one occasion, I was working with a friend whose ancestry is Native American, and they were showing me all sorts of things. Pipes with different feathers on and different, and I sketched them. I mean, I drew them. I had no idea, because I don't share that cultural history. I had no idea what they were talking about. But we did our research, we found out what they meant, and they were showing things to communicate. That's one of the, obviously, the deficiencies that we can have in interpretation, is they can show us a beautiful flower and we think, oh, that's pretty, that's nice. Meanwhile, that flower has meaning to someone, maybe the person that we're receiving it for, or perhaps this person knows that flower has meaning in a certain culture. So we can receive the information, we interpret it through our imagination always, and it doesn't matter if it's sixth-sensed information or tangible. Teacups and teaspoon information. You're going to use the same pathways. With us, with those of us who are spiritually perceptive, we will interpret that information through our most comfortable pathways. So for some of us, that will be clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, whatever clair works for you, and whatever your fairies know, whatever your mind knows, is comfortable for you. So those pathways will be used to interpret information, and then you will have it. So the imagination on one side deals with incoming information, no matter where it's coming from. And on the other side, your imagination is the powerhouse that you can harness to create anything that you'd like. Really anything. And that I promise you. But take baby steps. Do the blue feather. Get hold of Illusions by Richard Bach. Do the blue feather experiment first and see how far you get with that. And then you will know the power of your own being. Really, we are harnessing the imagination. It's not a dirty word. Imagination is a good thing. It is the power that we hold as human beings in our world. We can understand our world through it, and we can also affect our world through it. We all have one. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, yay! I'm going to wait for my favorite thing that I love to show up now. I'll catch you next time. Love always.